next guest is one of the best in the business. John Banjak is a real estate attorney who is also a principal in a title company. He also loves yoga and fitness and is an all-around great guy. Welcome, John, to our real life studio. We're so glad you're here today.
Yeah.
So you've got a long background in the real estate world, but came in through the legal aspect, the legal side of it. And but let's talk about title. What is a title company? What does a title company do?
Yeah, I don't think many people set out as an attorney to become a title attorney. You kind of just stumble into it, start in the real estate world as a private attorney and found my way into the title business, and I've been in it for a long time now. And yeah, the general consumer, you know, even if you're looking for to buy a house or sell a house, really don't know much about a title company. It's kind of a nebulous concept. And
they usually don't see the title company until closing.
Right. So when you think of a title company, if you can recollect a title company having purchased or sold a house, you're going to remember just being at the closing table, and it's going to probably be a real fleeting memory.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a nervous, strenuous time, and you pass through a title company, you sign all the documents, and then you move on to other things. So kind of out of sight, out of mind. And it's really real estate professionals that we interact on a regular basis to become familiar with the title insuring and the title closing process. And again, unless you're buying and selling real estate on a regular basis, you're not going to become that schooled at it, per se.
Yeah, and so the buyer or seller, they come to the closing table, they meet their closer who works for the title company, but prior to that date, that title company has been doing lots and lots of work to prepare for that closing. So what are some of the things that the title company does to prepare?
Yeah, the title business is sort of broken into two components. One component is researching the title, researching the history of the title.
The title is the title on the house that someone's buying or selling.
The ownership history of the property to make sure, really, to make sure that the current purported seller is the actual owner of the property.
Okay.
And sometimes they don't align. Sometimes whoever thinks they own the property really doesn't technically, or there's some sort of deficiency, and we have to identify that early in the process and then correct it.
So okay, I'm going to stop you right there. What would be an example of a deficiency? They find out it's not really the actual owner who they thought.
Yeah, there are various examples. One of which is two non-married individuals own a piece of property, and they believe that they own it as joint tenants with rights of survivorship. So if one of them were to pass away, then the other would automatically take title. When we research the title, we find out that they own it as tenants in common, meaning a 50-50 component, because there was some sort of mistake in the way it was titled, and therefore the 50% interest of the person who has passed away will have to be probated, or we'll have to find other workarounds. That's just one example.
So it might be their descendants, their heirs who own that half of the property, and so they have to be contacted.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. And then maybe some a little more simple and not as tricky to cure might be someone who thinks they own it in their individual capacity, but they actually own it in a trust.
Okay.
So we have to identify that and then provide the guidelines or the steps to get to the closing table with the right person.
And people forget, because you may have owned a property for 20, 30, 40 years, and you forget how it was titled when you purchased it. So the title company helps to do all that discovery work.
Right. We checked it to make sure that the title's passed from prior owner to prior owner in an appropriate and fully legal way. And then just to take a quick diversion, title insurance is often driven by the lender side of the transaction. Lenders demand that there be title insurance, and lenders ultimately want, when you go to the closing table and they close the loan, they now will have a mortgage lien against the property. They want to make sure that their mortgage lien is in first position, and there are no other liens that are on the title. And you can own your property, like you said, Sarah, for 20, 30 years and not realize that there might be some sort of lien on there. Maybe it's not a valid lien or something that's real active, but it had never been released.
Okay.
And we identify that and cure that.
Okay, so you find those possible liens and then go seek to get those liens taken care of before closing or at closing.
Right, we prepare what's called a title commitment, and that's going to become the instructions to our closing officers and or the other parties in the transaction. You know, you as an agent will get a copy of that title commitment, and our closers will work with your people to go through it, and it becomes like a checklist that needs to be satisfied in order to get the deal fully closed into the closing table. And it's going to identify things like liens that have to be paid off, and it's going to identify all existing mortgages. Sometimes someone might have something like a tax lien against their property. That will be identified on there, and then we'll need to get a payoff from the IRS in order to get that satisfied, in order to get that closed.
So this is just normal day-to-day stuff for you and your team.
Yeah, every day that we get real estate contracts come in and initiate the order, unless it's a refinance order that comes directly from a lender on a refinance transaction, but otherwise it's the contract that put the ball in motion. And again, the first part of the process, it works its way through our title research department to prepare the title commitment. And then once that's prepared, it switches over to the escrow or the closing side, and they start working up the file toward the closing, and that's where you as an agent and others are more accustomed to the interaction.
So does a buyer or seller have to worry about this title work that's being done in the background typically?
Well, yes. Again, like I said, the lender's going to be scrutinized. The lenders have to have, and it has to meet certain protocol. Buyers, at least on the residential side and the consumer side, aren't going to know a whole lot about it. So that's why it's important that you rely on and become very, very dedicated to a real estate agent who's going to guide you through that process, and then a real estate agent that knows who to contact at the title company to explain any kind of nuances that come up. So so one of the things we deal with a lot are things like surveys. Where someone gets a survey of the property, and we as the title company are going to review that survey and then try to take exception to any discrepancies, like if the fences don't line up, or if the neighbor has a shed or a garage built over the property. The title company is going to identify that, take an exception to it, and then the buyer is now in a position of trying to study what's the relevance of that, and then to work with the title company buying through the introduction by his or her agent to get that resolved.
So lots of good stuff that's going on, and important stuff in the background during a real estate transaction by the title company. You're there to protect the buyer and the seller and make sure everything goes smoothly, and that when that transaction takes place, it's all good. All right, John, thank you so much for being with us today to explain the nuances behind title work and title companies. It's a mystery, as I said at the beginning. So keep coming back for more details on what goes on behind the scenes of buying and selling real estate today. I'm Sarah Bernard with Real Life.